The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 165, recording on Friday afternoon, May 8th, from the TCO Performance Center. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the background that I am down here in the media bunker, as we like to call it. Just got in from Vikings rookie minicamp, the one practice that they're going to do for this, and we'll toss you some takeaways and then get into a bunch of topics over the course of this, we'll call it a weekend show. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, first, thanks, and you get to see this phenomenal background. Please hit the subscribe button if you can. It helps us out. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, you can follow us over there and that stuff. We're grateful for, absolutely, when you guys can support us and hit the stars and all of that good stuff. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. If you don't know about it, you haven't been listening enough. It's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really good people who are Vikings fans. And I don't know how in tune they are to Jacoby Thomas and Damon Claiborne and some of the guys we'll talk about today, but I do know they go to every game. They are as locked in as any. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson, they run the thing and they care about the community and have wanted to provide a banking platform here in this area that really, it's become, for me, it's guys I hang out with, I'll play golf with, so I can't thank them enough for their support and really recommend you guys checking out their platform. Show's also sponsored by ProMN Athletics. The best way I can describe ProMN is it is a space for either your son or friend's kids to have the most optimal development platform for them if they love playing football, if they're motivated to play in high school, if they want have aspirations of playing in college. This thing was started by three guys: Kurt, Graham, and Tanner. Tanner being Tanner Morgan, the former Gophers quarterback, and they really just want to work with kids in academy settings, 7-on-7 formats to help them reach their ultimate potential and offer wisdom that they can offer, having played. A lot of these guys have played college and know that entire recruiting process. So like the pitch for them is like just wanting to lift the tide of football, youth development of football in the Minneapolis area. So it's just cool for me to get to partner with people who care about that, given how much I and we being you guys listen to this, love this sport. All right, here we go. Vikings rookie mini camp takeaways and thoughts. So I'll start here. You guys are probably either, getting ready for the Wolves or Wild games or working out or driving around. And maybe the question you'll start with is like, what is rookie mini camp? What do you see when you're in my position? You get a credential, you get to come out here. And the best way I know to answer that question is it's a very teaching and learning type of football practice where each position, for the most part and for most of the practice, is broken up into specific, their specific position groups. Like on the left side over on one field, you've got Ryan Nielsen, the new defensive line coach, hollering out and exemplifying drills that he wants to see of the defensive linemen and edge rushers. On one area of the field, you've got the secondary working through some coverage techniques and, how do I change a direction? And this, capacity? What type of coverage are we thinking about here? How do we defend stacks and bunches in this way? And then on another area of the field, you've got the offensive linemen running off the ball, working through, certain blocks. And so for someone in my position, you just kind of bounce around. Either you could really go both ways. You laser in on one specific aspect of the practice, or you really just bounce around and try to identify some of the guys and focus on some of the guys specifically. At least for this first practice, the guys that the Vikings drafted. The 8 of the 9 draftees were on the field. The one who wasn't, unsurprisingly, was Caleb Banks, who was still rehabbing from his fractured fourth metatarsal in his left foot. I will say this, like one of the first things I saw walking out to practice was Caleb Banks with a 95 jersey pedaling aggressively on a stationary bike multiple times, which seemed to be a pretty good sign. Biking from the athletic physical therapist and experts I know, I think stationary biking is a pretty solid runway in terms of rehab and return to play. And so for him to be doing that at this stage sounded positive. And then Kevin O'Connell, after practice, said that essentially when Caleb Banks showed up to Minnesota and to Egan and they started to go through some of the evaluation, these guys, when they arrive, they go through physicals before they sign, all of that stuff, that there was some pretty positive news for Caleb and his recovery. Now, you guys are sitting there asking, okay, you didn't see him today. So when, Alec, do you expect to see Caleb Banks on the field? I'd say the very just the safest projection would probably be like training camp, because the way the Vikings structure a lot of their summer workouts are very, I don't want to say they're walkthrough-ish, but they are very the way Kevin O'Connell likes to go through the summer is very much a let's understand the system so that then we can start to stack once training camp happens. And then when they put the pads on, that's really the first layer of physicality. And it's been the approach that they've taken since since Kevin O'Connell got here. So I'd say that's probably the safest expectation is Caleb Banks gets back. He does a lot of absorbing of the system with Ryan Nielsen, the defensive line coach, throughout the next few weeks and next couple of months. And then I think in the best case scenario, training camps here late July, and it's the runway is full for Caleb to start integrating through a lot of the drills and workouts that the Vikings plan to have. So that's where I'll start with Caleb Banks. I saw Dominique Orange out there, definitely sizable for sure. Saw Jacoby Thomas kind of attached at the hip, the safety for Miami attached at the hip with the DB's coach Gerald Alexander. Caleb Tiernan, the tackle over with the offensive line, obviously. And so you're just parsing through. I will say more than I can. This was kind of an interesting one to me. More than I can remember being out here at some of these practices, there was a lot of staff, both coaches and personnel, attention to the running backs. And I'll ask the question over the course of the next couple of days of how much was that being attentive to some of the UDFA guys versus how much of that was just trying to get a look at Damon Claiborne, the 6th-round running back that they took from Wake Forest. Just my first impression was unbelievably shifty. He's not a big guy, but I think the fact he's already out there and was as seemingly attentive to Curtis Modkins, the running backs coach, in this first session is definitely I think that's has to be a positive. And then once Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason and those guys filter in and start working hand in hand, you got to think that's going to benefit him in the long haul. But he's like, I'd say the two guys I came into today with a little star next to their name that I wanted to see was Jacoby Thomas, safety for Miami. Didn't disappoint, neither did Damon Claiborne, and just the shiftiness in the way he moves. I was kind of stunned by how tall Jake Golday was talked to him for a little bit after the practice, and just, I mean, he's listed at 6'4". I'm not going to be surprised if he's even taller than that. He worked mostly at off-ball linebacker, and that's kind of my expectation here for a guy who's as versatile as he is, that they will integrate him at off-ball linebacker, try to, that's probably going to be the most detailed position to learn. And then over the course of the next few months, he will, I'm not going to be surprised if he mixes in as a pass rusher and works some of the pass rush stuff, because they do see Jake Golday's potential as being versatile enough to kind of occupy both spots. And just think early on, they're not going to want to overload him a ton. I mentioned Ryan Nielsen's name a couple times, but he's the new defensive line coach. He was the DC in Atlanta, the DC in Jacksonville, and then last year, I believe he was with Buffalo as kind of an advisor. But um, I was just, there was a presence to the way he was out there coaching and teaching today, and it's not surprising to me because everybody I've talked to within the industry seems to have a pretty high level of respect for his teaching and his acumen. But I don't think you can really overstate the importance that he is going to have in terms of getting these two big time picks on the defensive line in Big Citrus and in Caleb Banks to the potential that you obviously draft these guys with the hopes that they get to. So my eyes just gravitated to that position today, and it gravitated to his energetic approach on the field. I can't wait. I haven't talked to Ryan Nielsen yet. I can't wait to sit down with him and go through some of his philosophy, some of his mentors, and all that. But that stood out to me. And then I asked Kevin O'Connell just how important that component is going to be, and what he thinks of Ryan Nielsen, and he raved about the teaching ability today. But unpromptedly, Kevin O'Connell also brought up the impact that offensive line coach Keith Carter has already had with that group. And I thought that was notable. I thought that was important. I think over the course of the next few months, we will probably be having a lot of conversations about those two specific position coaches and the standard that they have, the intensity that they coach with, the types of practices that they hold. I just think the emphasis on those two guys, on the physicality, on the toughness, on the maybe difficult practices and the level of intensity. Like, I just think that's going to be a discussion, especially as we get into training camp. It's obviously really early, but that was just something that caught my ear when Kevin O'Connell brought Keith Carter up unpromptedly. And then just as I watched it, it was hard not to just focus or drift towards those two guys in particular. All right, to segue a little bit from rookie minicamp, I think I said on Thursday's show that I would talk a little bit more on Friday about some of the GM candidates that surfaced on Wednesday and Thursday. And I've spent a lot of the last couple of days talking to people throughout the industry about a lot of these candidates. I will say, I mean, it's worth noting that, I mean, Rob Brzezinski was out on the field today, as were a lot of the personnel staff that have been a part of this thing. And so, I mean, there was a point, I think, during the practice today in the middle where, like, Kevin O'Connell brought up Rob and a lot of the personnel staff, and they were all kind of together in a circle and talking through some things. I hadn't really seen that since I've covered this team. Not really sure the content of that specific conversation, but I mean, I do think that speaks to the certain level of synergy that exists right now internally. I'd say the easy segue from that is the Jauan Jennings signing. And you guys probably are like, how did you talk 13 minutes of rookie minicamp without getting to Jauan Jennings? But I think I said last week or 2 weeks ago on this podcast, there were a lot of people at the time of Jauan Jennings' visit when he left, or when it got to Wednesday and he didn't sign, people were like, I mean, how could they let him leave? Well, I think I said at the time that conversation and that visit was so much about each side just getting a feel for one another. And, for the Vikings, it was what kind of role does Jauan Jennings want to have? For Jauan Jennings, it was what type of environment and would I be entering in, and what's possible here. And ultimately, for the Vikings to sign a receiver 3 who would be a receiver 2 in a lot of organizations, for $8 million base salary with incentives to get up to 13 million, is a pretty impressive acquisition, in my opinion, specifically because a player like him allows this offense to do some things differently or better than they've been able to do them in recent years. I mean, Kevin O'Connell said it today, but Jauan Jennings on early downs can be the run blocking force who can line up on the outside. He can line up in the slot. You can motion him because he's smart enough to understand where to play certain spots. You can motion him and insert him as a blocker. That can only help play action and the potential for play action. And then on late downs, because of the way Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison often get defended with two defenders eyeing them frequently, the third receiver has to win in man coverage and be really good with contested catches at the point. And we've seen over the past few years, there have been times where TJ Hockenson has struggled in that area. Well, one of Jauan Jennings' best strengths is playing big body receiver and posting guys up and making catches. And then he also brings a level of grittiness, of toughness, of I've talked to somebody and they're like, he's really good at walking right to that line and getting the other team to step over that line with the way, kind of his savvy. And just with this offense where they want to go with what they've needed, it's a really good get again for $8 million in base salary. And so I think that type of signing is an example of where the alignment has gotten to internally, with Kevin O'Connell working with Rob Brzezinski. I mean, again, to get back to the broader conversation, I've had a lot of conversations with people around the league, who think that Rob Brzezinski does have a great chance at this thing. The question that does still get asked is it a great chance at just having the GM role in its entirety, and then they would maybe shift things from a little bit of a personnel side of it, next to him? Or is it he has a great chance at being a primary player in the decision making, perhaps in some kind of elevated title, and then one of the current candidates externally for GM can kind of fill the personnel role within that? And I think that's still an outstanding question that ownership in the end, or Andrew Miller, the COO, in the end, will have to answer to, in terms of why they've taken the route that they've taken. I mentioned Andrew Miller's name. For you guys, I mean, it's probably not a name that well. And I've always kind of been fascinated by Andrew Miller because he spent time in baseball. I covered baseball. He worked for the Cleveland Guardians for a long time. I covered the Royals in that same division and was always fascinated by the way that Cleveland's baseball team always maximized and optimized the players that they had without paying a ton from a payroll perspective, and they developed players well. So that, when I've spoken to Andrew over the past 4 years, those are a lot of our conversations, but he's really, as the COO, has been in charge a lot, primarily on the business side, and has worked with ownership on some of the major hires, including the hire of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as GM. From the sounds of it right now, Vikings ownership, as part of this current search, are beginning the process working with Andrew Miller again and the search firm Turnkey ZRG, with the two folks in charge over there, Chad Chatlos and Sean McGee. And so one of the remaining, questions is, from a football staff standpoint, internally, who is ownership, or who is Andrew Miller going to defer to, and how are they going to get an objective point of view, and an important point of view, because this person's going to be working on the football side and right alongside the football staff. What is the incorporation of that football expertise as part of this search? I think that remains another question within the conversation. Kevin O'Connell, I asked him about it today. Like, what is your perspective of this? He didn't want to go very far with it. He said, out of respect for the ongoing process, he didn't want to say much, but he said he deferred most to ownership and to Andrew Miller. And then when he was asked, does he expect to have a say? He essentially said, whatever they need from me, I would love to provide. Which it'll be interesting to see as the next couple weeks play out, how much opinion is ownership and Andrew Miller trying to decipher from Kevin O'Connell, whose working relationship with this person is probably the most important among all of them with this hire. So a lot of that is kind of big picture, big oriented think, and there's not a ton of answers to it. And I think that just speaks to kind of the uncertainty around this whole process. The two names on the list of external candidates who have generated probably the most excitement among people throughout the league, and that's executives, scouts, agents. Um, are Nolan Teasley, who is the assistant GM with the Seattle Seahawks, and Terrence Gray, who's the assistant GM with the Buffalo Bills. Terrence Gray was a longtime college scout here in Minnesota, working under Rick Spielman, has progressed, obviously, to be the assistant GM with Buffalo, and just has a lot of ties around the league. Definitely the personnel scouting background. And then Nolan Teasley is a little more of an interesting one. I mean, he's not, you can see it through interviews externally. Like, he's not probably the most um you know personality guy in terms of he's gonna light up the interviews, but when you talk to people throughout the league, he has a ton of respect from a lot of corners, and I think that Seahawks building, in terms of his intelligence, the work ethic, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I will be following this thing as close as I possibly can over the next few days and weeks, because I've said it in the past. Like, I think the structure of these organizations is really important. I think, um, the question someone asked me last week of who is 2026 riding on most, and the answer I gave was ownership. Like, I really think um, organizations really can only thrive or fall based upon ownership's influence and decision making and awareness and all of that stuff. And so I just, for me, knowing how much you guys care, knowing how much you guys want this team to reach the mountaintop, I think it's important for me to cover it the right way and be on top of it when it comes to a hire about who's going to direct decision making. So yeah, that's what I'd say there. Um, the rest of it, I just can't wait until we see some of the full workouts. You get to see the quarterbacks on the field. I mean, there's been a lot of talk still about quarterback competition, all that. I said this on Friday morning with Paul Allen on KFAN. Like, I don't think the noise with the quarterback situation, in terms of the uncertainty of who's going to be starting, what the role, like, I don't think that is a bad thing, when the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell has said that he hopes that competition within that position group brings the best out of all parties in that room. So, yeah, it's going to be really fun to follow. Can't wait to do it. We'll be back next week with more, 2 episodes a week these days. Show is being hosted by Talk North. It's presented by First Resource Bank. You can find it on YouTube, or Apple or iHeart or Spotify. Please subscribe, follow us, give us the stars. All of those good things help us out, and we appreciate that. Hopefully the Wolves and the Wild stuff go well for you guys. I will be tuned in over this weekend and can't wait to watch the action, given I am the sports fan that I am. So with that, thanks for tuning in to episode 165. We will talk to you very, very soon.